Hello, folks. It's Joshua here in Seattle, which is on the West Coast. For a lot of you tuning in, a lot of you are here in the state of Washington. I know there are folks who are tuning in, it's a little bit later. Today is the afternoon session that we do. We're doing 2 sessions each day on different platforms, myself and Ben Jones. We're going to be joined by some others as we move into the next few weeks. Educational sessions. Often in the morning, we do a brewing technique and style using a way to make coffee at home. And then in the afternoon, we're doing a little more free-form kinds of things, a little more educational types of experiences. So this morning, Ben actually talked about the history of the Melita brewer. Most folks probably have those. You definitely recognize the filters. You've seen them around. You see them everywhere, right? A real easy and simple way to make coffee at home with a pour-over method. This afternoon, what I'm going to be talking about is an even simpler way that we can make coffee. And this way of making coffee is often referred to as just simply cowboy coffee. And the reason it's so simple is because it takes away so much of the gear and the materials that we often associate with making coffee, especially those of us in the specialty coffee world, right? We are always looking at new and exciting ways to make coffee and to get to the kind of the essence of the coffee. You see that in our stores. You've seen it here as we've been sharing these different methods for making coffee, whether it's a Melita filter or a Chemex brewer, or even the best ways to make coffee in your home brewer. Excuse me, I'm just going to share this with another page here real quick. Those are all fun and exciting things to be always growing and expanding into. But today we're going to see that really, and Ben alluded to some of this earlier in the week. You can go back and check out that video when he talked about kind of coffee hacks. Even if you have no supplies at home, some of us maybe have found ourselves at home more often than we usually would be. Maybe we don't have our gear. You can always find it online, of course, but maybe you don't have the time right now to do that and you still want a cup of coffee. Really, we're just going to talk about coffee at its simplest today. As long as we hold on to certain things which are fundamental, we can still make a great cup of coffee with few supplies at all. Today, the only supplies we really need are a pot, and I'm choosing a small one, similar to one you might take camping with you. And you need coffee. Today we're going to be brewing with a new coffee that we have, a Papua New Guinea. It's the Nori Kori. I haven't actually had any yet, so I'm pretty excited. This will be my first cup of this. And then we need water. And in this case, I'm also going to be using an egg. Why, you wonder? Well, let's talk about why. We're going to start off with the assumption that maybe we're doing this when we're going camping. And there are, again, I speak of some elements that we think are fundamental. So the first of those is going to be the fundamental of brew ratio, which means that there should be the right amount of coffee for the right amount of water that's being used. If we have too much coffee and not enough water, we won't extract the coffee to its potential. If we have not enough coffee and too much water, we will over extract the coffee and get things we don't want to taste in our coffee. So we know that there is a kind of ideal range for coffee brewing, and it's a ratio of water or coffee to water, and we express it as a ratio, and that ratio is in the range of 1 to 14 to 1 to 18 grams of coffee to water. So for every 1 gram of coffee, I'm going to choose 17, 1 to 17. 1 gram of coffee is 17 grams of water. So if we're going camping, we're probably not going to bring our scale with us. Totally acceptable, right? Maybe that's the one thing we're not going to bring. We'll have our cheap and light camping cookware that we're going to have with us. So we can still hold on to the fundamental though, and with just a little bit of pre-planning. If you're going to make some simple coffee, you can go ahead and take the pan that you're going to go camping with, and when you're at home with your scale, go ahead and weigh out the water, right? Now, is it going to be perfectly exactly the same when you're out in the woods? No, of course not. But we're going to get it into the right range. So right now I'm looking at 809 grams. All right. I'm going to go ahead and now, of course, I don't have a fire built. I do have fire. All right. So started my pot. It's been put over the campfire. Now, knowing that I have 800 grams of water, it's pretty simple to do the math at this point. We just open up a calculator and divide 800 by 17. Gets us to, I'm going to say 45 grams of coffee, all right? So go back to my scale. Remember when you're measuring to always tare. Now, here's the thing. Again, with a little bit of preparation, we can make sure that we're observing the fundamental of coffee ratio. Okay. We can go ahead and pre-weigh our coffee. Boom, boom, there's one. We'll do another one too. I'm gonna go ahead and weigh this out. Now, we're gonna do a little brewing on the go. One of the things we're able to do, even in these times, when we do leave the house, we can go on a hike, get outside to get some fresh air if we've been cooped up for a lot. We can go to places where there aren't a lot of folks and have a nice hike, and we can still enjoy some coffee. I'm going to be showing you some tricks for doing that next week. And in that one, I'm going to have a hand grinder. And you'll get to see me do hand grinding out away from electricity. But in this case, since we're still at home, just like I don't have an actual fire, I'm going to cheat a little bit and I'm going to grind over here. Now, with this coffee method, we're, again, really simple. It's going to be a full immersion method, just like your French press that we did earlier in the week. So we want, with any full immersion method like that, where the water's in constant contact with the coffee, pretty coarse grind. Now, here's the thing with Cowboy Coffee. It's sometimes been given kind of a bad name because, again, fundamentals aren't being observed. 1 second. I know, it looks like I staged this, but seriously, we're just baking bread today. And it couldn't be helped. I knew it was going to go off during this broadcast. So those fundamentals, we've already talked about one of them, right, which is the proper ratio. Often, the vision is of the Chuck Wagon cook just throwing in a big handful of coffee without any measurements. So we're taking care of that. That's the one thing we're going to hold on to. Another one we're going to hold on to is we're not going to put the coffee into the cold water and bring it up to a boil. We're going to go ahead and let the water boil, and then we're going to add our coffee to it at that point. So again, just like a ratio that's incorrect, too much coffee, too little coffee can cause coffee to not have the right flavors that we want. Also, extracting the coffee for too long could do the same thing, right? So we're going to wait until the coffee behind me boils. And here's where the egg comes into play. So much of the work we do when we're brewing coffee has to do with pulling the grounds away from the water. right? Think about it. We have our paper filters that keep the grounds separate from the liquor that we're making. We have the French press, which pushes down a screen to move the grounds out of the way. Ben is going to be doing a siphon brewer coming up here in tutorials, which is a different way to again get the water to move through the coffee and extract the flavor we want, but then we want to get the coffee away from the grounds. Well, you may know, if you've done cupping before, that in the cupping table, which is at the foundation of our business of ensuring that we're getting the coffee we want and being able to roast it the way we want it to taste, when we do cupping, we don't actually pull the grounds out of the water. We let them settle. Cowboy Coffee does the same thing. We're not going to use anything to separate the grounds out. We're just going to allow them to settle to the bottom of the pot. So there are a couple of ways that we do that. One of the first ways is taking out a little bit of the water before it comes to a boil, letting it cool down a little bit. Okay? So we have some cooler water. The other way, which made natural sense, is add a little alkaline into the water. How are we going to do that? Crushed eggshell went right into the water. So the eggshells can add a little alkaline as it comes up to a boil. And on the other side of that, you also get some eggs for your breakfast. So that water is still coming to a boil. We're going to wait until it gets all the way to a boil and then let it sit for just a second so that we can let it cool slightly. Often we talk about ideal water temperature. We can get into measurements and numbers, of course. We know that it's between 195, 202 degrees or so for coffee extraction. But when we're talking about it in its simplest forms, we say it's water just off the boil. So once the water boils, we'll let it sit for just a second before we add our coffee. And while I'm waiting for that to happen, turn our egg. So this is one of the joys when we're making coffee out when we're camping is, it comes along with other things that we love, right? Food always just seems to taste a little bit better when we're camping, right? Everything tastes a little more fresh for some reason. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. But it has that, what do you say, that kind of woodsy feel to it, right? So water is at a boil. So while you've been waiting for your water to boil on the fire, you have been cooking other things. In this case, we have a little fresh bread that's been baked. I have an egg as well. And here it is. Coffee goes right into the water. That simple. Now, as you've probably seen in other classes we've had here or other places, we often talk about agitating the coffee as well to make sure that we get everything soaked. So we're going to go ahead and do that here also. Give it a couple good stirs. And set a timer for 4 minutes. There's nothing like the smell of coffee when you're camping, right? So that coffee is now steeping. Okay. Our toast being made. And now it's just the waiting game. So I'll talk a little bit about this coffee here. Now, we know that often coffee's coming out of this part of the world, what we call Asia Pacific. There's lots of freeholder, smallholder farms that are contributing to these washing stations. So when the coffees are semi-washed, which often can be associated with this part of the world, there can be some unevenness of characteristics of the coffee. Going to a washing station like this one has, though, this Papua New Guinea coffee is going to be able to reveal nice, clean flavors. In this case, we're talking, I think the one that occurs to me most, which is often just what I often think of when I think of these coffees, is cedar notes. So could there be a more perfect coffee to have, especially if you're camping in the Northwest, and something with cedar notes? The sweetness is going to be like a caramel sweetness, and there'll be some other floral qualities in it as well. So we've done one thing to help those grounds settle to the bottom. We're going to be doing another, which is the addition of the cold water. Now we're waiting just a few more minutes here for the coffee to fully steep. And we stirred it once in the beginning. Come back now when you're getting halfway through, and we'll stir it again. So I know Ben had his class earlier today on Melita, and he did a pretty exhaustive review of the history of the Melita filter. Really fascinating. Again, here with this technique, we're able to pull out all the things we want out of a coffee without any of the tools that we usually associate with the making of coffee. In this case, it's just hot water over a flame. We've held on to some fundamentals, the right ratio of coffee to water. And we're also holding on to another element that is a fundamental, which is the right amount of time, right? So we let the water heat up to just off a boil, and now we're letting it extract for 4 minutes, just like we would for a French press. I think often what happens with this coffee, the Cowboy Coffee made around the fire, and maybe this is, like sometimes coffee when it's been made in a percolator, maybe that it cooks, and there's kind of a fabled romance out on the prairie maybe, or out in the woods, where you want a strong cup of coffee. There was one anecdote I read about Cowboy Coffee. You make it, you throw some water in a pot, you throw some coffee in the water, you let it boil for a few minutes, and then you throw a horseshoe into it. And if the horseshoe floats, the Cowboy Coffee's good. We're not going to do that. We don't want it to float. What we do want to do is at the very end, we pour this colder water into it. And what that does, two things. It allows the grounds to settle, it helps the grounds settle a little bit more. And also cools the coffee down a little bit, so it's not quite so hot. All right. Now here's the part that I've been nervous about the entire time. I'm just pouring the coffee. Now, if I was out in the woods, I would worry a little bit less. Oh, no grounds in my teeth. What do you know? So, this has been Josh. I'm going to go have my breakfast. It's a little bit later in the day for it. Coffee made simply, holding on to some fundamentals. And yeah, as a side benefit, I needed that eggshell, so I have an egg as well. Look down below if you want a link for the nori curry, which I just made. And check in tomorrow. We're going to have another class at 9 o'clock. We'll see you there.